Is your product ready for retail? Does it have the durability? Does it have the right design? And thirdly, is it in compliance? Do you have what is required for the retailers on the back end? We're going to go through the entire checklist. We're going to make sure that you understand, hopefully in the future, if not now, what is going to be required of your product to be successful on store shelves. The first thing, and probably one of the easiest, is going to be UPC requirements. I'm going to go through the last contract that we were and go through some of the UPC requirements from a larger retailer. The first one is GS1-registered UPCs only. So GS1 is a standard organization that resells third-party triggers. So you're going to want to go through GS1 and get your UPCs registered. The second is that there's a UPC for each SKU. So if you have a wallet with different colors, you're going to want a different SKU for each one of those colors. You can't have one general SKU per wallet. The next, it's going to be specific to that retailer. So if you're selling into Home Depot and it's going to have a different UPC code than somebody selling into Walmart. So you can't buy it from Walmart, then return it to Home Depot. You want to make sure that they're different. The next is that you're going to have GTIN 14 versions for cases or pallets. So being able to scan a case or pallet, serialized barcodes for warehouse logistics, as well as compliance labels for third-party platforms like GS1 US Data Hub. The other one is Syndigo. That's what a lot of companies are using. So UPC requirements are important. They get into the weeds as far as compliance goes when you're talking about food with individual units and such, but the retailer is going to be able to give you exactly what their requirements are for those before you get into the details. When you're talking about compliance, a huge component of this is if you're working in food, it's going to be nutrition information. It's going to be compliance as far as labeling. So this is a food product that we did. Some of the requirements from the retailer. So one is the UPC barcode registered. Second is going to be the FDA compliant labels. So they're going to want to make sure that all the allergens are listed, nutritional facts, that the ingredients are in there. Next is going to be country of origin. Is it made in the USA? Is it made in China? Country of origin is important. Suffocation warnings on plastic bags, also a requirement. They're going to want shelf-stable and tamper-evident packaging. You know, all those parts that you have to peel off, especially for consumables. Next is going to be clear branding and functionality for the merchandise. You don't want to have anything on there that says it cures headaches, if that's an FDA requirement. The next is going to be case packs must be labeled with master barcodes. That's also done through the UPC. Then it gets into the weeds as far as toys, because this was a toy product. Another component that they're requiring is product liability insurance. Over $1 million is pretty standard. So $1 million plus. Sometimes when you're talking about pharmaceuticals, over-the-counter things, sometimes food, you're going to want $5 million plus. So that might be a requirement. Finally, EDI is a requirement for some of the larger retailers. So the Krogers, the Targets, they're going to want EDI for all of your product. And when you're working with EDI, it is a subscription service. So you're going to have to subscribe to their platform. Most chains, you know, Walmart, Target, Kroger, Walgreens, they all require this. It allows you to track the product in the stores. So when it gets scanned out, a lot of companies are using scan-based trading where you get paid after the product gets sold in the store, and they do that all through EDI compliance. So that's another thing to keep in mind when pricing your product. You're going to have to subscribe to some things. You're going to have to make sure that everything's in line with what the retailer requirements are before you get to that step. The next component is that you're going to want to make sure that your pricing structure includes that your MSRP supports your wholesale price. That if your product is selling at your retailer suggested price, what you suggest it sells for in the store, that you're going to be able to discount that down and give the retailer healthy margin. A lot of times that MSRP gets discounted and that margin gets squeezed, and then you may be less attractive to that retail store because they're making less margin on you. So understanding that wholesale to retail margin is going to be very important in protecting the longevity of your relationships with that buyer and with that retail store. A big issue that we saw during COVID is a lot of products got taken off the shelf because they weren't able to keep up with supply because of logistical problems. So understanding your production capacity, can you fulfill the orders, what your fulfillment schedule will be, and how long, if you're manufacturing overseas, it takes to ship into the States, how long it takes to get from the port to the warehouse the warehouse to the store. So you're going to want to know that information. You're going to want to understand that if there are any shipping delays, who's on the hook for that, because it might be very costly if you're working with a larger retailer if you hit or if you miss a shipment. So, Walmart, for example, they're very strict on that. You want to make sure that everything is delivered on time, in the right order, and with the right UPC labels. All of these things could be a catastrophe if done wrong. So understanding that on the front end will help you avoid those problems on the back end. Finally, you want to make sure that the sales material, the in-store marketing material, the point of purchase displays, everything is ready to go. You want to make sure that you have different ability to merchandise the product in the store. If it's going to be on a clip strip, if it's going to be in a dump bin, if it's going to be on the shelf, you want to make sure that you have different marketing in store available for each one of those. So if it's on a clip strip, you want to be able to put a little card above the clip strip explaining the product. If it's in the dump bin, you want to make sure that there's a little stand on the back of the dump bin that explains the product. And if it's on the shelf, you want to see if there's an ability to put a shelf talker, a little stick out card that stops people and makes them understand what the product is so they can look on the shelf and maybe explore something new, try something new and pull it off the shelf so they can try it. But having that marketing and display material available, ready to roll is important when doing this kind of a rollout. At the end of the day, your packaging is what sells. So packaging is going to be our next video. What kind of mistakes we've seen over the years and what kind of things really catch people's eye. So packaging is going to be a make or break on your product. If you've learned something from this video, I'd appreciate your like and subscribe. I hope to see you on the next one.